Well, hi everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show from Trust Insights. You can see Chris is back with us again this week, so therefore the transitions will be much smoother than they were when it was just myself and John. So this week, we are talking about how to figure out the best time to post on social media using your own data. So this is actually a question that we get quite a bit, and we see it quite a lot because there's this perhaps a misunderstanding that there's this like magical formula for when you should be posting on social media. And really what it comes down to is it depends on what your audience looks like. And so what we're going to go through today is an exercise using your own data to create a dashboard in Google Data Studio that shows you here is when your audience is most engaged on any given social media channel. Therefore, that will be your strategy for posting on social media. So, Chris, take it away.
Before we dig into building the analysis, we have to start with an important clarification. And the clarification is this: if you don't have a valid pool of data to test from, you're not going to get a correct answer. What I mean by that is this. Let's switch over here. This is our social scheduling software, Agorapulse. Now, if I only posted on Tuesdays at noon, then any analysis I do is always going to show the best time to post is Tuesdays at noon. That's kind of, it seems like that should be an obvious thing, but for a lot of people who just kind of jump into data and hope it works out, that's what happens. They do that wrong. So what you want to do before you do this analysis is you want to have a testing schedule. We set one up here that is every 4 hours on the dot, some sort of social media content. We have queued up content that is randomized and pushed out. So it's not the same content in every time slot. We used to recommend, for example, make one like the 4 o'clock slot, your promotional slot. We don't do that anymore. Now we say randomize everything and make sure that you are posting all, around the clock. 30 days is what our recommendations. Take 30 days to just create a ton of content. And if you missed it, go back to our YouTube channel and you can see our show on content curation. So as to where you could get enough content to be able to be posting that much around the clock. So that's our first caveat, is we need to be able to understand that we have good data to do the analysis from. So the tool that we're going to use to do this is one that should be very familiar to folks, particularly after last week's show, is Google Data Studio. And what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling out data from our Google Analytics account and doing that hourly analysis. So let's start by attaching our data source. And I don't know which one this is, so I'm just going to remove it. Let's add in Google Analytics. And let's do Trust Insights. We will do our standard Google Analytics property for now.
And so, Chris, to harken back to what John and I covered in last week's show, we always encourage people to have a plan before just building any kind of a dashboard. And in this instance, you already know what you're after. You want to see that hourly data. So we did that planning ahead of time that we're not doing on this show, but it reiterates the need to have a goal in mind as you're building any sort of report or dashboard.
That's absolutely correct. So one of the first things we're going to want to do, let's go ahead. This is the sample they gave us. This isn't super helpful. I'm going to go ahead and pull in a scorecard. And with our social channels, one of the things that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to look at a specific social channel. Now, there's a bit of a gotcha with Google Data Studio in that your segments are what control that in Google Analytics. So even though you're working in Data Studio, you'll have to set that up in Google Analytics so that you have segments for each social channel that you want to pay attention to. Or you can do it by source medium. But we're going to assume, in this case, I'm going to go to my segments here and pull out, let's do Twitter. I've got a Twitter segment already in Google Analytics. I'm going to apply it to this widget here. So now this is only new users, and I don't want it to be new users. I want it to be all my users, like so. So I have 74 users from Twitter. I personally like to have a little bit of comparison date periods just as a nice to have on my Data Studio dashboards. Next, we're going to copy and paste that. And we're going to change this from a scorecard to a line graph. Again, just to be able to see, for the purposes of this show, is Twitter doing anything for us? Are we getting any love from it whatsoever? So we've got that here. Oh, let's snap this to grid. That's going to drive me crazy. Okay. And always a best practice, slap on that date control. Make sure that you've got your ability to see dates. So this is the initial part. We can see just, is there traffic from Twitter at all? Yes, good. That's a good starting point. If this was a flat line, then the exercise would be over because we're not getting any traffic from Twitter, and there's absolutely no need to continue. Our next step, I'm going to take this widget here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. And the reason I keep copying and pasting the widget is because I've already added the segment to it. Why redo the same work over and over again if you've already got one unit that you can repurpose? And I'm going to change the data type here. I'm going to change the data type from scorecard to a pivot table with heat map. This is a very, very fun, powerful tool. Let's make this a little bit bigger. By a little bit bigger, I mean a lot bigger. And now what we're going to do is you can already see that it's got some sort of a table built out, but what we want to do is focus on time, right? So let's look at hour. We're going to do, the hour is going to be our, let's do columns. Okay, and, oops, should be rows, sorry. So there's our hour in rows, and we're going to want to clean that up a little bit because that does not make any sense. So let's make it ascending. And now for our column dimension, we want it to be day of week. And now what we've done, let's go into view mode here, is we've made ourselves a lovely, what's that out of order? Oh, day of week is not sorted correctly. Row is day of week in ascending order. There we go. Now we have created essentially a nice little heat map table of the best times for our Twitter account by the traffic that we get from Google Analytics. And that's the important part, is this is by traffic. So this is not the audience overall. This is not what Twitter's impressions are. This is people who've made it to our website from our tweets. And we see pretty obviously here, 8 a.m. on Thursdays. This is kind of hot. 8 a.m. on Mondays is time to be doing stuff. Make this a little bit bigger here so we can see the whole table. And then even though we're posting around the clock, you can see there's really not a whole lot happening down here. Now that tells us from a location perspective, we probably don't have a ton of audience in those time zones, but it's not zero, right? So there's still people Friday at 9 p.m. who are paying attention. There's still somebody Wednesday at 12 a.m. There's somebody, whoever this person is on Wednesday, they're up late. Or they're in like South Korea, exactly, or Australia, places like that. So what we've done is we've created a very nice way just to very quickly browse this and go, okay, these are the times when it makes sense to be active on Twitter. Now, if you want to dig into this a bit more, we can have some more fun with this particular data. Let's go back in and edit it. I'm going to add a page here.
So while you're doing that, Chris, I just wanted to sort of call out a couple of things that John and I had covered last week in terms of best practices. For people who are managing multiple data sources and multiple reports, just as a friendly reminder that as you are bringing in a new data source, we brought in the Trust Insights Google Analytics. You always want to make sure that you are naming your data source with something that makes sense, because what ends up happening is as you add on more data sources, they all tend to have the same default name, and then you don't know which one you're working with, especially if you're working with multiple clients. And then the other thing is to make sure that you are titling your report itself, because if you don't and you click out of it, then you just have a long list of untitled reports.
That's right.
just as a friendly reminder, because that's something that I do is I'll start something and then I'll get distracted and go on to something else. And if I don't name it, then I'll forget what the heck it was or where to find it.
We just had a client who was talking about this where he puts his name in all the data sources. So he knows like, okay, this is one that has something to do with me. It's not some cruft from 5 years ago.
That's definitely one way to do it.
It works. It works. Okay. Let's switch over to our second page here because we want to have some more fun with this information. I'm going to take this exact same thing, this Twitter segment here, and I'm going to go in and choose this time just a table with a heat map. You know what? I think I actually kind of want to do table with bar charts. It's more fun for me.
Let's talk about what's fun.
Let's do day of week as our first dimension here. And then hour is our second dimension here. We have our users. It should still be throttled to Twitter. Let's make this a little bit bigger here so we can see what we're doing. All right. And there's our delta. Style-wise, I don't love the fact that bar chart doesn't have any values on it, so let's slap a quick value on it so we can see what we're doing here. Metric 1, show numbers. Okay, and then let's fix up our columns to fit the data. Now, this is exactly the same data that we were just looking at in the heat map table, only it's a little bit more orderly. It's ordered by the number of visits. Here's where Data Studio has some real power to it that is missing from other analysis tools. I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn on interaction filter. What an interaction filter does is it allows you to change a report based on something that's already in the report, to change subsequent types of data. So let's do this. Let's take our table here. We can make a new one. This time I'll do a table with heat map just for fun, because this is what fun is. And feel free to disagree with me.
I feel like that's a different show.
That is a completely different show. Okay, so we have our page titles, and we have our, let's make sure this is users.
So as Chris is pulling that up, one of the little nuances that I learned about Data Studio is that if you're looking for users versus returning users isn't actually a metric that a field that you can select, but you can create a returning users calculated field yourself by taking users minus new users equals returning users. That's just sort of a side note pro tip.
Yep, you can do that. You can also filter it by user type as well, because it's a dimension. Okay, let's add in our date control up here. Now, here's what an interaction filter does. Right now, we're looking at all of our Twitter data, right? And the pages that all of our Twitter users have been to on our website. Pretty handy, pretty useful. If I click on Thursday, 8 a.m., I can now filter down and the table automatically rearranges itself as to what that specific thing is. So this block of content, this time, these were the pages that were popular. If I choose Tuesday at noon, get a different look here. These are the pages. Remember, even though there's 4 users, these are page views. So you're going to see more. The numbers will not add up because they're different scopes. I can choose, let's see here. Okay. I can just keep going down, taking a look at what are the different pieces of content that are valuable, that people saw value in. Now, this is a very granular look because what we've done is we've done by day of week and hour of day. If you wanted to, if you wanted a sort of a more roll-up view, you could take out the hour, right? And then you could say what was popular on Thursday. And the table, of course, rearranges itself, and this gives you the content that from Twitter on Thursday was the most popular content. This is really very, very flexible in terms of the kinds of things that you can do to get a look at your data. Now, if you want to kick it up even another notch for fun, you don't have to live just in Twitter on this. You can do more than just Twitter. For this example, I just decided to start with Twitter. I'm going to take out our segment for both tables. And let's move these down. Give ourselves a little bit of breathing room here. And add in control. The control I'm going to add in here, source medium. Remember that in Google Analytics 4, which is the next version of Google Analytics, this is your only choice for being able to determine the different channels that are available. Channel groupings have gone away in Google Analytics 4. Now, if I go back in here, let's go ahead and choose our date range. Our date range, let's do last 30 days. Apply that. Now, I have everything in here. So now let's look at, let's see, let's clear everything out here. Let's do t.co. Let's also do Twitter. So these 4 sources now, should have almost exactly the same thing, right? But I've now got the Twitter, I've got a couple other Twitter-based referring sources. So you can see our numbers are a little bit different. If I wanted to do just my email newsletter, right? Now we change this around. Now Friday is the day that has referred the most users. And I can, again, click or tap in to see what content, and it's the Google Analytics 4 Readiness Audit is the most popular piece of content. So
which is helpful, but that doesn't tell you when to post on social media, does it?
No, because this is my newsletter. This is a totally different
Right.
channel. I'm just saying that by having this filter here now, you can expand this from just one channel to many channels. If you wanted to do all social media, let's go ahead back in here. We're going to take this source medium, and this is where we can change to the default channel grouping. Big red exclamation point. If your channel groupings are wrong, which they all are out of the box with Google Analytics 3, this does not work because it will classify things like Facebook as referral traffic, which is clearly not the case. So you need to make sure your default channel groupings are correct before you do this. If I want to focus on social media, now this is everything that in my default channel grouping in Google Analytics that we classified as social media. This is now reflecting this. Now I can see Thursdays are the day this in the last 30 days. We have Instagram TV being popular. We have the newsletter. We have pumpkin spice, which I'm always happy to see people enjoying pumpkin spice news and data.
It's a damn shame.
Yep. And if we go back to our first page, we can do the exact same thing. So let's go ahead and take out our segments here.
So let me ask you this question, Chris. So you're taking out the segments and you're adding in that drop-down control, which then theoretically you have to pick everything that relates to that particular social channel or all of social. Can you add a drop-down control that includes your segments that you've pre-built?
You cannot. You
can,
cannot.
See, you would think that you could, because that would be useful. Because what if I only want to filter by my social media channels?
This is one of the quirks of Google Analytics 3. Recall that Google Analytics 3 has 4 different scopes, right? There's session, there's hit, there's user, and then there is product. Segments exist at either the session or the hit the session of the user level scope. And the channel groupings, believe it or not, are at the hit scope because the hit is attached to the individual visit itself. And so you can't slice and dice them in here. You can't make that work because it just doesn't, it's just not compatible. That has been resolved in Google Analytics 4 by getting rid of the channels entirely. So you could now, I believe, slice and dice because everything now has been consolidated down to the event level. So it's a lot cleaner, with the complication that in Data Studio, it's still not fully implemented. So
the answer is no, I can't do what I want to do.
It'd be a lot cleaner if it was there, but it's not.
Yes. Noted.
Exactly. So now if we take our default channel grouping and look at all social media, now let's do our last 30 days here. 298 visitors. And again, we're looking like Thursday at 8 a.m. is our time for all social media. So this is anything, everything, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever.
So with this kind of analysis, you're seeing that there are other spots where people are being drawn to your website. But if you're seeing that one particular block that is the most popular, that's the block that you would want to save for your stuff, for big announcements, for the most eyeballs versus, when we went through the content curation, we talked through why it's good to share other relevant content. Those little blocks that are the most popular are the ones you want to save for yourself.
Yes, exactly. And we haven't even talked about arguably the most important data point, which is not even on here. And that is, instead of users, what if we looked at goal completions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did somebody actually do anything of value? And
That's a great question.
Out of 3,400 visits, 242 goal completions. If we throttle this down just to social media, 35 goal completions out of social media, right? So that's a pretty small number. And if I were to do the exact same thing to the rest of this layout here, goal completions for this, and goal completions for this. Go to view mode, go to social media. So now you have a different thing to contemplate. And the different thing to contemplate is Thursday at 8 a.m. is when you're getting traffic. Wednesday at 2 p.m. is when you're getting social media conversions. Right. So the question is, which is the better time to post at? You should be posting at when you're getting eyeballs, or you should be posting when someone's willing to do the thing that you want them to do. This is not an easy choice, right? This is one where you probably should set up a testing plan of some kind.
Well, and I would say that it depends, because you have people who are at different stages of your customer journey. So if you're using the Thursday at 8 a.m., you are introducing people to who you are, bringing them to the website with the goal of getting them to come back and do something. And then the Wednesday at 2 p.m., that's when you're like, hey, you're returning. It's nice to see you again. Buy this widget.
Exactly. But it's an important thing to take into account. Like, this is how different your customer journey can be. If you look in an actual customer journey report of some kind, you'll be able to see, like, oh, there actually are different times of day, or there's a different channels at a different place depending on where they are. Now, in our most recent one here, for our customer journey, Twitter in general shows up very early on in the journey, and it's not a huge surprise then to see that we're getting a lot of traffic and comparatively very few goal completions, right? When we looked at all these numbers from all social media, we're getting 35 goals, right? Let's go and edit this and change this back to source media. By the way, I don't recommend doing the analysis this way. We're actually doing analysis in a reporting tool, which is a bad idea. We're just doing this for example purposes. You would do all this analysis in Google Analytics and then know what you're going to build in Google Data Studio based on that. But because this is just monkeying around, we can go ahead and do these things. The other thing that you can do, if you still want to do it in here because you might want to reuse it, is we're editing this as it is. You might want to spawn a new page as like your sandbox and just be able to mess around. And then once you have something you like, you copy and paste it. So now if I go into source medium here and go t.co, let's see, 53 users. And oops, there you go. From our Twitter referral traffic.
And the other pro tip that we covered last week that's always worth repeating is, if you have multiple pages in a report, also take a second to name the pages. So, we were talking about how we've built these books that have 30 some odd pages, and to be able to figure out what's on what page, you have to name those pages.
Yep, you can name the pages. There is also a way, I typically don't do it because I forget, but you can actually make a table of contents page that can link to all the other pages in your workbook. I just keep forgetting to do that.
Well, it would also be if you had the pages labeled, you could easily make the table of contents because you would know then what is on each page. Either way, label your stuff. Pro tip, name things.
Name things. So now, based on our goal completions from Twitter with our source medium thing, we're down to 5 Tuesdays at noon, Thursdays at 3 p.m. are from these particular sources for our goal completions. Again, we see that there's a lot of traffic on Twitter, very few conversions. We see that in the customer journey analysis because it's a sort of front of journey thing where the messaging for the most part is going to be, hey, you should get to know us, not, hey, buy a widget now. But to your point, Katie, there's absolutely no harm in testing out the messaging at the times of day when you're already getting conversions to see if behaviorally something is happening there. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of how do we do this thing? How do we do this analysis and create a report that's useful to people? The critical thing with any kind of reporting is, to what Katie was saying earlier, we've got to be able to make a decision from it, right? Looking at it's great, but the whole reason this entire show is called what it is, we call the show So What, is because you need to have some kind of takeaway. Like, what is the thing that we're trying to do? If there's no decision to be made, then you don't need the report, right? It's kind of a moot point. But once you know, oh, this is what I'm going to do next, then the report becomes more valuable. Let's see, we got no questions this week. So either of you got some questions on building fun stuff in Data Studio?
No questions, but more of a comment. As you were going through it initially and you had that Twitter segment and you built out pages 1 and 2 with just Twitter, my first thought was, oh, well, that would be very easy to replicate. Just duplicate the page and then just change the segment. So you have your Twitter pages, your Facebook pages, and so on and so forth. If you don't want to go through and have the same thing and sort of like sort everything, it just depends on a matter of preference and how you're going to be using and presenting that data. Because what we also showed is that you can export the data, you can screenshot it, you can embed it into another web page. And so it depends on, as you're thinking through, why am I even creating this thing? It's what is the best way to present this information so that somebody can instantly look at it and go, okay, I know what to do. I don't have to futz with it too much.
Exactly. And that's one of the challenges, is you have to decide what level of interactivity you want. And that comes from those user questions that you ask people before you put together a dashboard. Okay, who are you? What do you do? And what is the intended outcome that you're going for? Because if you are you cannot make a dashboard for everybody. Like, you can't make one dashboard that serves the CMO and the intern just as well. It's just an impossibility. You need to have those user journeys mapped out. And our general rule of thumb is there's a dashboard for every vertical department in your organization, right? Marketing's dashboards should not be finance's dashboards. And then there's a dashboard for every horizontal in your organization. So directors would have a different dashboard than managers, which would have a different dashboard than coordinators. Yes, it's a lot of dashboards, but it makes it easier for people to get exactly what they need to make decisions for their role. We're trying to make something that serves, managers and up all the way to the board of directors is just a waste of time.
I agree with that. Because it's just a different set of metrics. And to your point, Chris, it does sound daunting, but if you plan it out ahead of time, do those user scenarios, and then say, okay, page 1 is the CEO, page 2 is the directors, page 3 is this, then you have a plan, and then it's just built. And then people can just look at it, or you can just screenshot it, and that do the work up front. And then on the back end, you're just saving all the time, and all you're doing is making decisions and taking actions.
Exactly. Well, we don't have any other questions in the comments queue, so we may as well roll on out of here. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you folks next week. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.